Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mara Morris. I'm the Assistant Division Director for Grants and Professional Development, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Brandon Turner, who is our Admin Deputy, and Nika Tu, the Finance Manager for the Department of Arts and Culture. Up on the screen, you can see our agenda for the day. We're going to ask that you hold all questions until the end. You are welcome to drop questions that you might have as we go along into the chat so that you don't forget. We will make sure to address all of the chat questions, and then as well at the end during the Q&A portion, you can raise your hand on Zoom, and so we can have some order and get through everyone's questions together. To that end, please also make sure that you remain on mute throughout so that our recording is clean. This recording will be sent out to everyone eligible to this grant opportunity, in addition to a slide deck and a FAQ. We'll probably get that out by the end of this week. Let's move along to the program overview. This is just a little refresher on Creative Recovery LA. Next slide, please. Thank you. The purpose of this one-time initiative was to address pandemic impacts on the arts and creative economy, which is one of the most economically significant as well as hardest hit sectors in the county. The funding for this program was provided by the LA County Board of Supervisors through the American Rescue Plan Act. Next slide. The initial allocation, which we dispersed in 2023, was over $26 million, and it was through 5 separate and distinct grant programs. $14.2 million was set aside for arts relief and recovery, $1.7 million to reopening culture, tourism, and marketing, $4.7 million for creative works and jobs for artists, $3 million for Creative Career Pathways for Youth, and $2.8 million to Arts for Justice Involved Youth. Next slide. So this supplemental funding amounts to an additional $4.9 million that is allocated specifically to the recipients of reopening culture, tourism, and marketing. That grant had the smallest allocation out of the 5 initial grants, and our goal is to see it support the widest possible amount of recipient organizations. The funds must be used to promote and market arts programming to diverse audiences and program participants, just as was the case for the initial $1.7 million that was funded to this grant program. So none of the elements of the program have changed. Okay, let's move on to the eligibility requirements. So a total of 527 organizations received an award for this grant program initially. And in order to receive the supplemental funding, your organization must opt in. In doing so, you will be attesting that you remain eligible under all of the same eligibility requirements. So namely, you as the grantee are a nonprofit with 501c3 status or a Model A fiscally sponsored arts organization located in LA County, or that the grantee is a nonprofit with 501c3 status or a Model A fiscally sponsored non-arts organization located in LA County with demonstrated arts and culture programming and services. You will be attesting that you were open and actively programming prior to March 1st, 2020, and that you are open and actively operating and programming now. So that's it for eligibility. Let's move on to the timeline. So on May 20th, we sent out an initial email notification to all of the 527 eligible organizations about this supplemental funding. You all received that, which is why you are here. Congratulations on making it to the May 29th Technical Assistance webinar. June 21st, it's around the corner. This is the deadline to submit your notification of interest web form. No exceptions or extensions will be granted, so it is very important that you get this in on time. We will then be taking all of the information that was submitted in the notification of interest in order to send out grant agreements via Adobe Sign. These will be emailed out on or before July 30th. These grant agreements must be electronically signed by your indicated signers no later than August 20th. And then payments will be dispersed in full on or before December of 2024. It is very important to note that due to both federal and county requirements, you must provide accurate information by all of the stated deadlines. Failure to do so may disqualify your eligibility for these supplemental grant funds. And that is our timeline. So moving on, we're going to quickly discuss the LA County vendor registration process. Okay, if you are a current grantee of the departments, you are familiar with this process. Congrats. Everyone, including current grantees, everyone must visit the county vendor registration page in order to either begin a new registration if you have never registered for a county vendor number before, or to verify that all of the information associated with your vendor number is still accurate and up to date. If needed, you will need to update your existing vendor information via that vendor registration page. So I'm going to enter the website into the chat now so that you have it handy. Please make sure that you start this process immediately. You need an up-to-date vendor number in order to submit your notification of interest, which, just as a reminder, is due June 21st. So if you want to move to the next slide, if you are an organization who already has a vendor number, go to the vendor website, WebVen they call it, search for your organization either via your organization name or your vendor number, and review the accuracy of the name and address as listed on this website. This is exactly how your information will appear both on your grant agreement as well as on your payment. So the grant agreement will be addressed to the name and address exactly as it appears on this vendor registration website, and your payment will be sent to and addressed to exactly that name and address. It's just really important that you have made that connection and that the legal name associated with your vendor number is accurate and that you can receive payments made out to that name and sign for grant agreements made out to that name. If necessary, you have to update your information with vendor services. The Department of Arts and Culture is unable to assist in this process. It is kept separate and apart from our department. Okay, if you are an organization who needs to register for the first time, visit the vendor website and begin a new registration. Within about a week, vendor services will issue you a vendor number. They should email you right away, but it's also totally fine to just check the website every couple of days to see if it has populated yet with your name. So don't delay in getting started with this process. Once you have received confirmation that your vendor number is in place, visit the vendor website, search for your organization name, and double check that the name and address is correct. I have seen them fail to enter a suite number, or, it's a human being with human error. So if maybe a number got transposed, double, triple check it that all of your information is accurate. And if necessary, you will need to update your information with vendor services. Here is the email address for reaching out to vendor services if you have any questions. They are incredibly responsive. I have found they respond to emails right away. Next slide. This is a screen grab of the vendor registration landing page. As you can see here, we have put big arrows. You can start a new registration, or down below on the right, you can search for your existing vendor information from this landing page. The search function, I will say, is only going to show you the information that exactly matches how you registered. What I mean by that is if you, let's say my organization is the El Sereno Community Choir. If I registered as El Sereno Community Choir without a "the" in the name, but when I'm searching, I search for the El Sereno Community Choir, they're not going to pop up. It's not going to give me any results. So better to use less information than more in your search, just to make sure you're capturing your name in the search function. And Brandon, I think right now is going to actually take us to the website and show us how it functions, so you all can get a feel for that.
Yeah. All right. You can all see the webvan here.
Not yet. I'm still seeing our slides.
Reshare. Now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so here is the webvan website. This is maintained by the county's Internal Services Department. So all vendor registrations happen on this site. As Mara said, we're going to need to have organizations review all of their vendor information just for accuracy here. It's pretty easy. The vendor search is here. It will bring you to the mega list of 100,000 or more organizations that have vendor numbers here. And you just type yours in. I saw unusual suspects come in a little while ago. Unusual. I typed unusual, I got it here. And then you can click in, and then you'll find, here's your main address, here's the main contact. Just this information. This is the information we're asking you to verify, because this is what will end up as the address on the grant agreement and the payment, as Mara said. So this is here. It's pretty straightforward, and as Mara said, they're also pretty responsive. So you can go to the contact us, email them, or there's multiple ways to get a hold of them.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll head back into our slides. We're going to discuss the notification of interest web form next. So I'll give Brandon a minute to catch up, but the web form was linked to you in the email that was sent out on May 20th. I'm also going to drop a link right here in this chat so that you have it on hand. Hopefully that works. It's the Adobe Acrobat sign link. This form must be submitted no later than Friday, June 21st, 2024. The form is time-stamped, and we will not be accepting forms after June 21st. So please don't wait until the last moment to submit. I just can't stress that enough. So in order to submit, you will need your verified and up-to-date vendor number and information. You will note that the form is automated. It's not going to let you submit if it is incomplete. So just, you know, a big pointer would be work slowly through the form, read everything closely as you work your way through. And as you can see in this screenshot, you must select continue. Down below, it's just attesting to the terms and use of Adobe Acrobat Sign. And that will then allow you to enter into the form. And then that start arrow, which is pointing down, that's going to be how you begin entering the information. And it walks you through step by step through the form. Okay, next slide. As you work your way through, it's going to ask you for your organization's primary grant contact info, your verified and up-to-date vendor info, your official grant agreement signatory information, which I will go over momentarily. And then you will be attesting that your organization continues to meet all of the eligibility requirements for the funding. One of the first things that the form is going to ask you to do is find your organization's name in the drop-down list of all 500 and some eligible organizations. If you cannot find your name, check under T or the. The list mirrors exactly how you entered your name in the original Creative Recovery LA application that you submitted last year. So some organizations are under the, and check there, as well as without the, just to make sure you can find yourself. Now let's talk about grant agreement signatories. The state of California has very specific requirements on who is legally able to enter into binding agreements on behalf of nonprofit organizations. As a result, your grant agreement can only be executed in one of two ways. And this notification of interest web form is going to ask you to provide the name, the board title, and the email address for everyone who is required to sign your grant agreement on behalf of your organization. Method number one is 2 board signatures. The first signatory is the executive board position. So the board chair, the board president, or the board vice president would be signatory number 1. And signatory number 2 is the supporting board position. So that would be the CFO, treasurer, secretary, or assistant secretary of your board. Please note, we often find that staff members, such as the executive director or some other staff member of your organization, also holds one of these board positions. So if that is the case, it is important that they use their board title in order to sign and not their staff title. The second signatory method is one signature via board delegated authority. If your board has agreed that one individual is able to enter into binding agreements on behalf of the entire board, you will need to provide the evidence that states this clearly. This often looks like a signed and adopted board resolution or signed and approved board meeting minutes, or perhaps your organization's article of incorporation includes delegated authority, but again, it must be specifically laid out in those documents. The web form is going to ask for the name, the title, and the email of the individual with delegated authority. And it's also going to ask that you upload your proof of the delegated authority. In a second, I'm going to have Brandon kind of walk us through the web form. I've gotten this question a number of times though, so I will just state, if you enter in all your information and then you suddenly realize that, let's say your board treasurer has a brand new email address, please go in and resubmit your entire notice of interest from top to bottom with all of the corrected information. One of the first things we will do is double check our data for duplicates, and we will use the latest, most current timestamp, and we will discard the earlier versions that you submitted for your organization. Don't send me a corrected email. It's not going to make it into the data. Just submit the full notification of interest corrected. Okay, Brandon, take us through the process of you're going to do electronically signing the grant agreement. Is that what we're doing now?
No, we're going to just review the notice of interest.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, y'all can see the notice of interest, Mara?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks great.
So we tried to make this as easy as possible. So it's a web form through Adobe Sign. Again, Mara said you have to agree to the terms and conditions here. So you hit continue. Then it's going to prompt you. We have this first box where it's the drop down. Again, however you entered your information on the original CRLA grant, your organization will be listed here. So should be here somewhere. It looks, but they're all here. And then primary contact information, who are we corresponding with for the grant? There will be updates sent out periodically as things are happening. Grant agreements, payments, all of that. Acknowledgement of responsibility. Mara already went over this, but because we're under federal and county guidelines for this, we're under tight timelines and kind of strict data usage of vendor information and signatories. So we need to have that all accurate. Revisiting the vendor information here after you visit WebVem and verify your information, it can be entered here. And then there's the grant signatory information. Both options are here. You only need to fill out one. If you're going with method number one, we have a select for the board positions for both the executive position and the supporting board position and their information. This information will be used to send out the electronic request a signature electronically when this happens. It will also prompt you to go to the next thing. Or second option here is one signature by a delegated authority. This is where we need the true title of the person with that delegated authority so that we can match it up to whatever delegated authority evidence that you provide us. So you can click this and it will bring you an attachment. And then finally, an attestation that you're eligible for this grant. Information's here, and then information about the submitter. Sometimes the submitter and the primary contact are the same, just re-enter your information, but it can be different, so we acknowledge that. And then acknowledgement that you are authorized by my organization to submit this notice of interest. Pretty straightforward there.
And then at the end, if you go to submit, I think it'll give you, once you have filled everything out, it will give you the opportunity to submit. The submit button doesn't appear until the form is complete and filled. So if you're not seeing that, it's because you're missing some information somewhere. So just go back and review slowly and carefully.
And all required information has the star.
Yes. Okay, we are getting so close to the end, y'all. I'm going to walk everyone through the process of electronically signing the grant agreement. So as I mentioned, the Department of Arts and Culture will be sending out the grant agreements on or before July 30th via Adobe Sign for electronic signature. The signers that you indicated in your notification of interest should be on the lookout for an email that will be coming from Adobe Acrobat Sign. This is an example of what that email looks like. This one in my sample came from my colleague Larissa, but the actual email address is Adobe Acrobat Sign. It might be coming from some other member of the admin team, but Adobe Acrobat Sign is the actual email that they're looking for. Also, the primary grant contact that you listed on your notification of interest is CC'd on this Adobe email so that they can prompt your board members to sign when they see that email come through. And signatories must sign the grant agreement before or by August 20th. Failure to sign by the deadline may result in forfeiture of the supplemental funding. These deadlines are hard and fast. Okay, so let's discuss, oh, and similarly, the signing process is going to be a lot like submitting the web form because we're using the Adobe program for both. So it walks you through how to sign the grant agreement, and it won't let you finalize and sign until you've done all the things. So it's a similar process. But yeah, let's talk about grant closeout and final reporting now. There is no final report requirements for these supplemental funds. We will ask that you acknowledge the grant funding support with use of the Department of Arts and Culture logo, as well as specific credit acknowledgement language that will be provided in the grant agreement document. We also ask that you send a thank you letter to the Board of Supervisors. It is always important for them to hear directly from our grantee organizations. And all of that information will also be included in the grant agreement document and package that we send out. Once the grant agreement is fully executed, the primary contact as well as the signers will automatically receive a PDF of the grant agreement, and we will make sure that all of this language, which we include in our Exhibit B, terms and conditions, is sent to everyone. But this is really important. We're going to ask that you please do not make any public announcement of this supplemental funding until we give you the green light to do so. So just sit tight and stay tuned. Even when you have signed the agreement, just no mention of it until we have given you the green light. And that is the end of my presentation. So now let's move on to questions. Before I go back through all of the very many questions in the chat, I want to make sure that you all have the email address to reach out to the grants team. We are here and responding to questions every single day, so don't hesitate to reach out. I do need to find my chat though. Oh, here we go. It's the ARPA grants at arts.lacounty.gov email address. That's how you reach us, and that's the best place to send information so that you get the right response and that people have their ARPA hats on when they're responding to your questions, because we are gearing up for grant season and we don't want to confuse your question with a different grant program and have the answers be obsolete. Okay, so I am going to go through this chat first and see what has come up. And then I'll answer questions. So if I don't get to your question in the chat, just go ahead and raise your hand. Good morning, everyone. Let me get through these good mornings. So let's see here. There's just, it's wonderful to see you all. There are so many of you. Apologies. Okay, what happens if you double register with LA County vendor registration? Your registration will be tied to your federal tax ID number, and if you have already registered with that tax ID number, the system will not let you double register. It will say a registration with that tax ID number already exists, and it'll just wait for you to figure out your next steps. So it solves that problem for you. Question 1, we already have our vendor ID, but our address is not listed in WebBen. Our tax address is different from our physical address. Brandon, do you know if we, my instinct is that the way you register with the county for a vendor ID is kind of separate from how your taxes and like maybe you use a PO box for one, but a physical address for mailing. I think how you register for your county vendor number is entirely up to you. Are my instincts right here?
Yeah, and they will let you register 2 addresses, but indicate which address of the 2 that you've registered you want the grant agreement and the payment associated with.
Ultimately, when you then go into WebBen and search for your name or your vendor